Khalid is an R&B singer-songwriter who has spawned a huge hit this year in the track Young, Dumb and Broke, and has also featured on many guest tracks like Calvin Harris and a few others that I can't really remember right now. And this album, American Teen, did come out very early on in the year, but I've gotten to it quite late. He's still very young. He wrote this album when he was like 18, maybe even 17, and he's 19 now, and he is becoming probably one of the more up and coming figures in R&B right now, I'd say. But in his vocals, he's very different to your usual R&B singers. You know, he's not really anything like a Frank Ocean, a Daniel Caesar, Anderson .Paak, Party Next Door, Drake, Bryson Tiller. He's none of those guys really in any kind of way. I would say, honestly, when this album kicked off with American Teen, I was thinking like he was more of like an indie rock singer. Like it felt like I was entering like an indie rock album just the way his voice came on. It could have easily been like Imagine Dragons or something, which does give him a very unique edge, I think, already just in his tone of voice. It's very deep, but it's not really like a whispery croon that you would often get in R&B, which does really work in his favour, I think. And this album is very much for the youth of today. I mean, American Teen basically kicks off the album as a sort of American anthem saying that, you know, the youth, us young people, don't always say what we mean, you know, all that kind of stuff about making mistakes. And much of the album does really showcase that Khalid is still only 19 years old because the youthfulness carries on throughout, which makes it, of course, a very relatable and trendy sounding album for music listeners because, of course, most music, big music listeners are of that age. So, of course, this does fit that mold. But lyrically, I do feel like it brings a lot of setbacks because he comes across as quite naive much of the time. I mean, a lot of the songs delve into relationships, and too many times on this album, I hear Khalid go on about things like, oh, you left me, you probably aren't as happy with that person as you would be if you were with me. It's that kind of really it really irks me, that kind of stuff. It's like, you know, you could try and get over your relationship. Be the bigger person. Don't act like you're the best thing that's ever happened to the other person. It's just really cringy type stuff. But relatable, and that's a very key factor to this album because I feel like that's probably what's drawn so many people towards Khalid because of his relatability factor. And on the big single Young, Dumb and Broke, that's another track that I feel is very relatable because most people who are like of that age and even my age, 22, I'm not even that much older than him, but do feel like sometimes, you know, you're young, you don't have a lot of money, you do get treated like you're a bit dumb by, you know, older people and parents and stuff like that. And that track really is the kind of like modern day laid back weed anthem, I want to say, which may sound a bit odd, but I do feel like it has such a nice flow to the song. It does make you feel kind of like, you know, you could get high to it and it would be enjoyable. And weed is a reference point on a lot of these tracks too. He does talk about how he's been smoking weed and all that kind of stuff. I think 18 brings out a few lyrics though that become my least favourite on the album because I think it's just trying a bit too hard to reach out to that audience. You know, again, talking about mistakes, talking about how the car's smelling of weed, so the parents are gonna like kill him. And on the chorus, he's like, I'm 18, I still live with my parents. Like, that's okay. It's okay to be 18 and living with your parents. And the line where he's like, oh, my parents aren't as understanding as yours. It's just that kind of like feel sorry for me thing. I've had a bad day. My parents are giving me a rough time. Oh. I think it's the most try-hard he gets on this album to being like that relatable youngster, because I do feel like he comes across as quite mature, but when he comes out with these lyrics, he sort of falls back into his youthfulness, which I think he could kind of propel outwards and get away from that, but a lot of the time he doesn't. There's a lot of potential here, but I feel like he's just stuck in the routine of focusing on what will kind of get people thinking, oh yeah, this is so me. There are some really strong melodies on this album though, especially on the track 18, that has got a really good melody. The track Keep Me as well, I do love the way that track sounds. Location is quite an interesting sounding track. It's probably the most R&B he gets on the album, but much of the album he does kind of fall into ballad type stuff, which I'm not really that into. And I mentioned Daniel Caesar earlier in this review, and honestly he did that way better this year, to be honest, I think. So this guy has potential, but for me right now this debut is just alright. I think there's just too many drawbacks and setbacks, and lyrically I just think he's not quite there yet, even though he is talented and he's got a great voice, and there are some excellent anthems on this album too. It's just he needs to just mature a bit. Give him a few years and he'll put out that great album, I'm sure. So yeah, it's a C grade for me. Let me know what you think of this if you heard it when it actually came out and not like 10 months later or whatever. And let me know what I should review next. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews and have a good day, 'cause I'm 18.